Hey, I'm Clark Donnelly, along with Jessica Hemmelgarn and retired FBI Special Agent Harry Trombitas. Thanks for joining us again. It's Off the Record, an FBI agent's perspective. And bank robberies fall into separate categories. They each have their own characteristics. A lot of bank robberies are carried out by serial robbers. There are folks who need that money to maintain a drug habit or some other reason that they don't want to work for it, so they're going to hold up a bank for it. This is, I think, one of the most interesting cases that you worked. I watched it from the media's point of view unfold, particularly the climactic scene. But also, folks, if you're going to listen to us to the end, make sure you stay all the way to the end, because the final twist in this last story doesn't come until the very end. And I'm talking about the strange and wonderful case of Commander Pedro.
Yes, Commander Pedro and his Lost Planet Airmen. Um, do you remember that song, Hot Rod Lincoln Clark?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Son, you can drive.
You don't even
drink.
have you don't have to
yeah.
ask me.
You
No.
weren't even a thought yet, Jessica.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But yeah, this back in the mid '90s, there were a group of men that were going around robbing banks throughout the Midwest, and they'd wear masks, like Ronald Reagan masks. Or another thing that they did was they would lease or rent vehicles in the names of some famous people, including a couple of FBI assistant directors.
Clever.
And these individuals, again, were notorious robbers. They hit a couple of banks in Columbus wearing kind of construction clothing. In one of the banks, they were yelling out "Andale, andale," and "La Bamba." It was like they were trying to convince the witnesses that they were Hispanic or something. And
Oh my goodness.
anyway, we figured out, investigators with the FBI and the local police departments where these bank robberies occurred had figured out that it was a loose band of white supremacists, and they were led by an individual by the name of Peter Langan, and he had the name Commander Pedro, and he was their group was called the Aryan Republican Army, the ARA. And that's when I had heard about the case and all of that. And we jokingly called him Commander Pedro and his Lost Planet Airmen, after Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen. But anyway, they robbed banks, about 22 banks throughout the Midwest. And
22?
22, and they received
Wow.
$250,000 in proceeds from the robberies and that. And anyway, the FBI and the other agencies were all working together and trying to locate these individuals. And they had a source that was providing them information on like exactly where Peter Langan was supposed to be. And there was a source who indicated that Langan was going to be at some kind of a meeting in Indianapolis at a mall. And we received this information very short notice. Like, we had very little time to get to Indianapolis to set up for this meeting. So a group of us, and I was on the SWAT team, and basically we took the SWAT team out, and we drove at speeds of around 90 to 100 miles an hour all the way to Indianapolis. Of course, we were on the radio calling, letting the troopers know that, hey, we're coming through. We've got to get to Indianapolis as quickly as possible. And of course, they allowed us to travel on, and we went to the shopping mall where we were supposed to meet with the case agent and the individual who was providing the information to just iron out the last details. And once we had gotten to the mall, we met with the case agent, and we set up in the area waiting for Peter Langan to show up, Commander Pedro, and he never showed. And so we drove like crazy men out to Indianapolis for nothing. And so we drove back to Columbus, and, we're kind of upset that Langan didn't show, but hey, sometimes things happen. And then we got information from the same source again saying that Langan was going to be back at the mall the next night. And, this was for sure. And so we loaded up in our cars again. This time we had enough time that we could drive the legal speed limit. And we got out there in plenty of time to set up and be ready for Langan to show up and take him down. And wouldn't you know, he didn't show up again. And so the case agent by now was really upset at the source, because it was like that he felt like the source was just playing us, was not being truthful with us. And
Yeah.
so he put a lot of pressure on him. And when the source says, "I've been lying to you. Peter Langan is actually at a house, a safe house in Columbus on Reinhardt Avenue. And he's there now. That's where he's hanging out. And he gave us the address and everything. And so we drove back to Columbus, and some of our SWAT members scoped out the house, and we found the white van that Langan supposedly drives. It was parked behind the house, just off an alley. And we came up with a plan that we were going to hit. We were either going to hit the house or wait for Langan to come out. And the reason why we wanted to wait for him to come out on his own, maybe go to the van, was because we had information that these individuals in this gang had explosives and things, and the source had told us that there were explosives inside the house. And so we didn't want to risk, breaking into the house and trying to arrest Langan in there and have him have access to explosives and that. So we decided that we would go ahead and wait for him to come out and go to his van, and then we would place him under arrest at that point. And so by 6 a.m. the next morning, some of our SWAT team kept surveillance overnight, and then the rest of us showed up the next morning at 6 a.m. And, we're dressed up. I mean, I've got my, in my bureau car, I've got my full SWAT gear on. I'm wearing a helmet, bulletproof vest, with yellow writing on the back, big block letters, FBI. Got my SWAT pants, my black Danner Gore-Tex boots. I got my Sig Sauer
Whoa.
226
Man,
semi-automatic pistol with
he's geared up.
15 rounds. I got three extra magazines on my hip, and I had a Heckler and Koch MP5 submachine gun, fully loaded.
Holy moly, Harry.
And that was just me. I mean, keep in mind, these guys were armed and were notorious for, having weapons and, explosives and things. So this wasn't anything anybody to mess around with. And I remember my partner, he was dressed the same way with me, and we were in the same car together. He was in my car. And while we're waiting, some of the kids are going to school, and they're walking by.
Imagine that sight.
And
I can imagine it right now.
They're going, "Cops," and then they're going 5-0, 5-0, for
Like Hawaii 5-0.
exactly. And
I do know that reference.
There you go. You got that one right. And Poe and every other kind of name for cops, but people pretty much left us alone.
I would imagine.
Everybody knew who we were. We were sitting down the street a little bit, so we were hoping that Langan didn't find out or hear any of these comments and that. So my role and my buddy's role, that we were in the same car. The van was at the back of the house, and there was an alley that came off of the back of the house where the van was, and the rest of the SWAT team was going to be just off that alley, hidden out of the way. And my partner and I would be out in front. And once we had word that Langan was going to go to the van. He was heading to his van. My partner and I would move up, and our responsibility was to keep Langan from running back into the house.
Okay.
So my partner and I understand our responsibilities and that we're all ready to go. Somebody has on the SWAT team has the eye on the residence, and they see a kitchen light come on inside, and so that means somebody's up and around, and we might have movement at any moment. And so we're all ready to go, and we do a radio check to make sure everybody's radios are working and stuff, and then the person with the eye says, "Okay, the light's off and the back door is opening, and it's Langan, and he's walking to his van." And my partner and I are ready to go. We moved to the side of the house, and got my earphones in. I can hear that the Langan has made it to the side of the van. The other SWAT agents are approaching, and I can hear them yelling, FBI, FBI. And so John and I move into a position behind the house by the steps that led up to a second floor. So we've got the back of the van covered in case he tries to escape and run back into the house. And I'm hearing, the SWAT team commander going, FBI, FBI, get your hands up. And by that time, Langan had made it inside the van, but had somehow been able to dive down into the van, into the floor of the van. And when he came back up, it looked like he had a gun in his hand.
Oh,
And
dear.
so the SWAT team, they're yelling, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. And it looked like Langan was going to shoot. So they opened fire. And there
Wow.
was a barrage of gunfire. I mean, everything from submachine guns, to handguns, to shotguns. And it was all over in about 10 or 15 seconds. And
That's it?
I'm thinking
Whoa.
I'm thinking to myself, I mean, yeah, it was just a flurry of gunfire.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking at this point, Langan's dead. There's no way that this guy's still alive. And so my partner and we're waiting for what's next here. And I hear our SWAT commander go, "Driver, get your hands up." And
What?
I'm thinking
He's
that's
alive.
just like a cursory kind of a thing, just in case you're alive, get your hands up.
Oh.
And then I hear, "Okay,
Woo!
put your
He's
hand through the
alive.
window." So I'm thinking, this freaking guy's still alive after all of that? And I see these hands come out through the driver's side of the van, and one of our SWAT team members goes up and grabs him by the hands and pulls him out through the window, gets him to the ground, and handcuffs him.
Whoa.
We go up. There was nobody else in the van. We did a check of the van. There was nobody else in the house. We did a check there. But Langan had what I thought was a bullet hole in his cheek. And I'm wondering, how in the hell is this guy, and there was blood on his face and stuff. How in the heck is this guy still alive? And apparently the only thing that happened was that mark on his cheek was from wadding from a shotgun. And it wasn't a bullet hole at all.
Oh my
And
gosh.
a little specks of blood and thing came from glass breaking and that. So really he was not hurt that badly at all. And we looked at the van, and the van had been insulated with all of this plywood. So that's why our handgun rounds and that didn't penetrate the van, was because the plywood was so thick. So it was almost
Oh.
like an armored vehicle in a sense. The only rounds that went through were from 223 rounds from a rifle, that M16 that traveled through the van, all the way through the van. It went into a garage next door. And unfortunately, there was a classic car in there in the garage.
Oh no.
It got bullet holes in it. I mean,
Oh,
it was
It went
awful.
through the car into the
Went through-
garage and hit the neighbor's car.
It went through the van into the garage and hit the classic car
Whoa.
garage. I mean, that was awful, but it just shows you how much penetration power 223 rounds had. And so anyway,
I'm wondering if it made the car more or less valuable to the collector, knowing that it had been involved in a famous shootout.
wasn't Bonnie and Clyde, unfortunately.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Commander Pedro and his Lost Planet Airmen. But so anyway, make a long story short, we arrested Langan. He and his counterparts went to trial, ended up being found guilty, and Langan was sentenced to prison. I forget what the amount of time was that he was given. I think it was a life sentence. And while he was in prison, he decides that he now associates being with as a woman. And so here's this head of the Aryan Nation group of his as this fearless leader, and now he is ascribing to be a woman. And so there's all kinds of court cases and things that go through, and it's approved that Langan can in fact associate being a woman, and that he is allowed to have gender confirmation surgeries to help him become that woman. And of course, this is all at taxpayer expense. He was transferred to a female prison, the Federal Medical Center in Carswell, Texas, and he now goes by the name of Donna Langan. So no more Peter Langan. He is now officially Donna Langan. So
Wow. All right. Well, that twist was certainly worth waiting for. One question I have, Harry, before we get to Jesse's takeaways, was there ever any indication there was a link between those white supremacist activities of Commander Pedro and his Lost Planet Airmen and the bank robberies? Or were they were robbing banks, but also happened to be members of this white supremacist group, which was very active at the time? If folks remember, this was right at the time of the Oklahoma City bombing.
yeah, they were associated with the Aryan Nation, and they happened to be bank robbers. That's how they were getting a lot of their money to fund some of their operations and that. So, yeah, there was some discussion about whether there was any connection to the Oklahoma City bombing and that, and the answer was, as far as I know, no. But it certainly was in play there for a while. So, as far as I know, these guys were just kind of their own little group, and they happened to be bank robbers that made their money by robbing banks and supporting their cause.
Yeah, well, bake sales are so boring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not really
Lot
going to
to-
get much from those brownies.
Right. A lot to
No.
unpack in this episode. Well, if you are in the middle of a situation that Commander Pedro might bring about, you're in a bank and suddenly a violent robbery attempt begins to occur. You just don't know what to do other than you get on the ground, put your hands up, whatever the robbers have told you to do. But at that point, if it was me, my brain would pretty much completely shut down. And that is one of the challenges law enforcement has, is eyewitnesses are not always the most reliable, because even though they're there and you would think, well, this happened in front of a crowd of people, surely they know who did it. Well, it's just not always that simple.
It's certainly even just in everyday life, if you have you and your friend are walking down the street and you both look over and you see something, be it a person or a car, even when you're not under stress, your description of what you saw probably going to be a little bit different from what your friend's was. We both we all pick up on different things that seem to, capture our attention. And you add in the stress of being involved in a crime, or like what Clark mentioned, a takeover style robbery. And, literally your mind shuts down in that. And so no matter what kind of a crime it is, what I would encourage people to do is to take a breath and try to keep your focus on what is occurring. Don't let your brain close down, and so you're unable to see an accurate picture of everything that's occurring. If you only focus on one thing, and I'll give you an example. I remember there was an interview with somebody that had a handgun pointed at them, and they were asked to describe the person that was pointing the handgun at them. They said, I don't know what he looked like, but the barrel of the gun was about this big around. So what happens is you tend to focus on something that's going on rather than the total picture. And if you take a breath and you try to keep yourself as calm as possible, look at the total picture as much as you can without focusing in on, maybe an item that's really not as significant as maybe a description of a person. So try to keep an open mind, try to remain calm. You're certainly following instructions. If it's in a situation involving a takeover style robbery, you definitely want to listen to what the robber's saying. Try to comply with what they're doing. That's not the time to try to be a hero, but that doesn't mean that you shut down your brain and you're no longer thinking. Keep your eyes open. Try to look as much as you can. What we'd like to see is for you to be able to be a good witness and describe to us what the person or persons look like. Typically, that means that you start with, is it what's the race of the individual? What's the sex of the individual? About how tall are they? What is their build? We don't expect to make a carnival worker out of you, like saying, oh, that person's 178 and a half pounds. Nothing like that. It's either use general descriptions like thin, medium, or heavy. Those are good enough for to be a good witness. Then you start from the top of the head and you work your way down. Is the person wearing a ball cap of any kind? And then you go from the general to the specific. Yes, the person had a ball cap on. It was a red cap. And then you go from the general to specific. It had an Ohio State logo on it. Then you continue down. Did the person have any glasses or anything? Did they have facial hair? Was there anything unusual about their face? Then you continue down and you start with the clothing description. They were wearing a dark, it appeared to be dark clothing. Was it a jacket, sweater, shirt? What was it? So you're going from the general to the specific. Were there any logos or anything on the shirt or the jacket? Then you continue down. A lot of people forget to look at the pants. In robberies, this was really important. Bank robbers would typically wear something that they could discard. So you might have seen a black ball cap and a blue windbreaker, but by the time the police see them or spot them or stop them, they don't have the black ball cap on and the blue windbreaker anymore. They've thrown those items to the side. So
that makes sense. I wouldn't have thought of that ever, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, they, they realize that witnesses see certain things, and he had a dark ball cap and a blue jacket on. Well, if I get rid of those items and I don't have that on anymore, I look like just, if they don't give you any other description, then, the police aren't going to be able to find the right person. And so if you look at the pants, typically they're not running down the street taking their pants off.
Slow down my getaway. Same with shoes, probably too, right?
Right, exactly. That's I was going to say, I'm working my way down. You got pants. Yeah, what color were the pants? What style of pants? What about the shoes? Are they unique shoes? Were they black? Were they sports shoes of some kind? And then were they carrying anything? Did they have gloves on their hands? If they have gloves on the whole time, like that they're in a bank, for example, chances are they're not going to leave any fingerprints. And so that's important to pass along to the police as well. Were they carrying anything like a bag? And, if so, what's color of the bag? What kind of style? All these things you want to try to remain as calm as possible and keep an open mind. Don't let your brain shut down, and you'll be a much better witness if you're able to do those things. And I have just to continue that on. Let's say they get into a car. You may be good at describing cars. Maybe you know a lot of makes and models, but not everybody does. And we'd much rather you give us a general description of a car than tell us it's a Chevy when in fact you don't really know, you're just guessing. So just tell us, is it a big car or a little car? Is it an SUV, station wagon? Is it a pickup truck? How many doors does it have? Does it have 2 doors, 4 doors? Does it have a hatchback? What color is it? What's the basic color? And then, of course, could you see any of the license plate? Did you get any of the numbers? What state was it from? It's helpful if we just know what state it's from. But if you can give us any or all of the numbers and letters on the license plate, obviously that's what we'd like to see. But try again not to panic. Keep an open mind. Look at the whole picture the best that you can. Don't focus on one little thing. Try to take in the whole individual so that you can give us a good description. If there's multiple people, do the same thing for each individual. Start again with the race, the sex, the height, the general weight, thin, medium, or heavy, and then go with the clothing. Start from the top and work down. So those are the kind of things that if you can help police solve a crime, the best way to do that is remain calm and take in the whole picture.
All right, very good. Thanks a lot, Harry. Jesse, well, Jesse, that seems simple enough, but between Commander Pedro and how to be a good witness, what are your takeaways from this episode?
It's kind of a really large takeaway. I think a lot of us don't think we know how we're going to respond in this situation. And it's important to realize that we don't, and that we need to be able to be calm. We think we're going to be like this person that knows everything and can pay total attention. And the way that Harry's described it is some of us might not be, but that's okay. And I think that's my second takeaway, is that you don't have to be an expert. A lot of times, like when I'm in situations, I'm like, oh, could I describe this person? And I think in my head, like, could I describe them and what would I do? And I always felt like I had to be specific. And I think Harry's advice is really good ones, that it doesn't have to be specific. Are they thin, medium, or heavy? Is the car large or small? What color is it? I don't have to know makes and models. And I think a lot of us get hung up on the specifics and can't give a description at all.
Before we go, where can folks find this podcast so they can tell all their friends about it? Because everybody's going to want to listen.
We are on YouTube, our website, and all your favorite podcast platforms.
Now, once again, this is Off the Record, an FBI agent's perspective. For Jesse Hamilgarn and Harry Trombitas, I'm Clark Donnelly.
Off the Record, an FBI agent's perspective is created and hosted by Clark Donnelly, Harry Trombitas, and Jesse Hamilgarn. Produced by Jesse Hamilgarn. Stories in this podcast are inspired by Harry Trombitas' autobiography, Dark Places, about his time in the FBI. Music is called Cruise in the Back and is available on Storyblocks. You can find this podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube, and on our website.